really quickly going to go over the difference between dry aging and wet aging. And so firstly, what I would definitely want to say to you is, in my opinion, there's absolutely no comparison between a dry aged steak and a wet aged steak. In any way really, between flavour or texture. So I'd almost argue actually there isn't really any aging going on in a wet aged steak. The pre-packed supermarket steaks, which are typically wet aged, are just not, in my view, really like a steak. So in the next few minutes I'm going to try and explain to you the differences between the dry and the wet, and what wet aging really is. So with dry aging, the carcass, first of all the carcass is kept intact and allowed to hang for around 2 weeks after slaughtering in chilled storage areas where air circulation naturally evaporates all the unwanted fluids which would otherwise stay trapped inside the meat. This initial hanging period is really critical as it allows natural enzymes to start to tenderize and develop flavour in the meat. After this initial hanging, the carcass is then portioned up into what's called primal cuts. For these are the big chunks of steaks which are not at this point in time cut into individual steaks. So it's the things like the sirloins, the T-bones, the porterhouses, the tenderloins and fillets. So as I say, they're not individual steaks yet, but they are kept in these chillers where air is allowed to flow over them and allow the enzymes and the natural dry aging process to develop this wonderful nutty flavour and textures which we all love in a dry aged steak. So after the first 2 week hanging period, the dry hanging in the slaughterhouse, from here I would like to know that my butcher has these joints in a dry ager or in a dry aging cabinet. So during the dry aging process you'll see a dark leathery purpley layer of mould forming, a crust all around the external surfaces of the beef. So that's why it's better to have a large chunk dry aging, so that when this outer layer is trimmed off by the butcher, he can then, or she can then, go in and cut you your individual steaks, so you don't get any of that mould on your steaks, but you do get the dry aging benefit. Okay, so what is wet aging and why is it used? Well, wet aging is basically just mass production, meat mass production. Meat for wet aging is not hung in the slaughterhouse. It's immediately removed from the carcass while it's still full of fluids. It's immediately vacuum packed and shipped out. This means the meat has no time to mature, no time for natural enzymes to start to tenderize or develop flavour. It still has all the fluids and therefore it weighs more, which is something the supermarkets love. To recap, wet aged beef has not been hung in a slaughterhouse for 2 weeks. It is literally, all of the meat is taken straight off the carcass and vacuum packed immediately, so it's heavier, full of water, full of fluids, full of blood, put on the transit lorry and away it goes to the supermarkets. I would say just find a butcher that you can work with to make sure you have dry aged steak all the time.